In April 2015, I was about to conclude my sophomore year of high school. I had just entered into my first serious relationship, and I was soon to be on my way to the final couple years of secondary education, finally deciding that my heart was in music, but if I wanted to make it in the world, it could only ever be as a hobby. It was a time of change in my life, as it was for very many people around me. My girlfriend was graduating and on her way to college in the fall, and my now stepfather was just about to propose to my mother. To say these changes had a profound influence on me would be an understatement. By a dramatic coincidence, I found myself driving home from school one day, listening to a band that I had only ever heard of in passing, but never listened to directly. The new single from 21 Pilots' new album, Blurryface, Tearin' My Heart. Upon my initial listen, I, who at the time was, and would be for many years, a person who judges first rather than receives, didn't like it. For one, it sounded like every indie pop rock song that dominated the charts in the early to mid-2010s. In my mind, it was no different from any other group popular around the time. Nothing separated this new band from Foster the People, Walk the Moon, Cage the Elephant. Just another standard indie affair from an unknown collection of faces with a three-word name. A bland, unoriginal love song with a slightly political message in the bridge that says nothing at all about what would become the most turbulent political atmosphere in the country in my lifetime, and so I shut it out of my mind. Weeks later, I was asked by a classmate if I had heard the new 21 Pilots album. Still an underclassman and trying to appear more cultured and in the know about the music scene than I really was, I replied yes, though I kept my mouth shut about my thoughts. For days, I heard critics and fellow musicians praise this album, and specifically this new single for its originality and blending of musical genres. Tearin' My Heart specifically was praised for its lyrical focus on family and relationships over worry and distraction, and the bridge section's synth-heavy instrumentals seen as groundbreaking and innovative for its use of high-end production as music itself rather than just a musical tool. Of course, now I agree with all these things, and while Tearin' My Heart is far from my favorite track on the album, it always seems to grow on me more that I listen to it and find something new in both its message and music. Still, something about the first listen turned me off of 21 Pilots, and I remained unimpressed. In that moment, I never would have expected them to influence my life and career the way they eventually would, nor the success that this album would go on to have, nor that 21 Pilots would rise to arguably the most popular music duo of the entire decade. I had no idea the background the band had before Blurryface, a history that I have detailed in the first 3 parts of this video essay, available through links in this installment. After the success of Vessel, and the widespread media attention garnered from their continuation of extensive touring around the world, the boys had come into contact with Ricky Reed, the producer of wildly successful hits from Jason Derulo's Talk Dirty album, as well as songs like Pitbull's Fireball. Having written nearly every song for the album during their previous tours, including having a full demo of what would be the album's closer, Goner, complete, Tyler and Josh began recording the majority of Blurryface with Reed in Hollywood, while a handful of other songs, including the band's most popular single to date, were recorded in Tarzana, California with Mike Elizondo. An additional track, Message Man, was recorded in Los Angeles with relatively unknown punk producer Tim Anderson, and the boys flew across the pond to London for longtime Arctic Monkeys producer Mike Crossey to record The Judge. The scope of this recording effort was immense for the duo, who had used a single producer for every track on their previous album. But the 4-chief outcome would prove influential for Tyler Joseph specifically, who used the time with the now 5 separate producers to learn the tricks and trades of proper industry production, something he would use to his benefit in recording the band's following 2 albums in his own basement. I will note, however, having 4 different faces in charge of separate sections of the album is far from a seamless effort. While the works of Elizondo and Reed are as close as I think they could be for 2 very different producers, the work by Anderson and Crossey stands out like a sore thumb. Not in a bad way, or a better way, but definitely different. Credit where credit is due to Joseph and the album's mixing engineer, Neil Avron, who made the collection flow as well as they possibly could. The band utilized graphic designer Brandon Reich to completely rebrand their image. Along with a new logo and custom typeface, Reich produced a distinct pattern design for each song, overlaid with the chosen color scheme of black, white, and red. 9 of these designs are displayed on the front of the album in the rough shape of the band's logo, a design choice that would retroactively be reworked to represent Nico and the Niners on the following album, Trench. A cool addition to the design comes in the cover of the vinyl packaging, where a series of layered graphics are stacked over a human face, painted with these designs to mask it and reveal the album's cover, hence the name of Blurryface. The album was released on March 17, 2015, along with the radio single Fairly Local. The song reached the top 100 chart, but didn't go much further, peaking at the number 84 spot. They had more success with the follow-up, the aforementioned Tearin' My Heart, which released in April and reached the number 82 spot. While critical acclaim poured in for the duo, they still had yet to break through with the sleeper hit. They hoped to capitalize on the summer season with Lane Boy, a single cracking meta jokes about the band's eccentricities in songwriting and performance, but still no success. In fact, this song did the worst of all 3, missing the top 100 entirely and only charting in the top 30 on Rock Alternative. It wasn't until all the way past Halloween that they pulled the trigger on the album's 4th single, and everything about the band completely changed forever. I say Halloween for a very specific reason. That was my first impression of the song. 2 weeks removed from the holiday, I found myself again driving home from school when that boring indie band came on the radio again. Only this time, they had really introduced something new. Though the lyrics are repetitive and the sound eventually equalizes to traditional pop, Stressed Out is highlighted, at least in my opinion, by the most captivating set of sounds 21 Pilots has ever produced. Listen. That right there. That single spooky alien motif was enough to hook me on the song and spark what would go on to become a near decade-long love-hate affair with the pair of church boys from Ohio. I think that's part of why the song did so well, too. Like I said, the lyrics of Stressed Out are far from ambitious, but it's something everyone can relate to. The struggle of trudging the mundanity of adult working life while longing for a chance to relive highlights of youth. But lyrics alone don't make a song, certainly not one which goes 1 for 2 at the Grammys. It might be a stretch to speculate, but if I'm able, I want to credit the song's success, a record-setting topping of the American rock charts, with that single haunting line, which gave 21 Pilots their most successful song to date. The song was followed by 2 more singles off the album, Ride, which peaked at an impressive number 5, and Heavy Dirty Soul, which wasn't released until over a year and a half after the album, December of 2016. In the meantime, the success of Stressed Out rocketed the band to the mainstream. The worldwide Blurryface tour lasted from May to May of the following year, after which they almost immediately began their second tour of the album, The Emotional Roadshow, which lasted all the way from the same May of 2016 to June 2017, where they concluded the album with 5 consecutive sold-out shows in their hometown of Columbus. As if the ticket sales and radio plays weren't enough, the public, and specifically the fan base, was on a Blurryface craze. The album became the first album in music history to have every single track certified gold, and the album itself has since reached triple platinum in the United States. The boys accepted their Grammy for Best Pop Duo Performance in their underwear, a move which many, including myself, considered kinda cringe. Look at Jenna's fit though, my good. And though cringe, much like Trey Parker and Matt Stone attending the Oscars high on acid, the stunt did wonders for their popularity. After the release of Ride, the band were featured as the headline group of the collaborative Suicide Squad soundtrack, with their original single Heathens featuring as the focus song in both the film's trailer and eventual credits sequence. In another collaborative project, the duo released a cover of Cancer by My Chemical Romance, part of a recognition effort celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the latter's Black Parade album, where each track was successively covered by an up-and-coming indie band. I won't lie, the 21 Pilots version is far worse than the original, and among the worst covers on the compilation. But I appreciate the effort, and their involvement helped not only get eyes on the product, but turn the attention of many mainstream music fans, including myself, toward a band which I'm embarrassed to say I was just too young to enjoy when they were in their prime. Thirdly, the band decided to rewrite 5 songs from the Blurryface era and record them alongside the band Mute Math, who had opened for them the majority of the latter tour. This project, helmed by Mute Math frontman Paul Meany and labeled TOP x MM, featured reworkings of Heathens, Heavy Dirty Soul, Ride, Tear in My Heart, and Lane Boy, which add elements of 70s flair, such as disco and psychedelic rock, to an already atmospheric soundscape. Taking my time on my ride. Aided by the fact that this project boasted 2 separate guitar players and drummers. These additions would later be seen in the duo's most recent album, Scaled and Icy, of which Meany served as a secondary producer. That was just before Christmas 2016. There were still 6 more months of touring before the aforementioned 5-show finale, and so July 2017 arrived. Tyler Joseph and Josh Dunn were now staples of the music industry. A project which had taken up the better part of 3 years, during which Tyler had married his longtime girlfriend Jenna, and Josh resumed his relationship with ex-girlfriend Debbie Ryan. 3 albums, an additional 5-song EP, 9 singles, 2 separate world tours of over 240 shows. Utterly worn out, Tyler and Josh shut the door to their fans, never officially announcing their hiatus, but one day, without warning, removing themselves from the public eye for over a year. Blurryface has a special place in my heart. Not only was it the album that made me a fan of the band, or the era with which I became encapsulated by this music, but it's the project that inspired me to make music more than just a hobby. I have a very specific memory of listening to The Judge with my brother while on a ski lift in Colorado, and deciding then and there that I was going to take writing music, and more specifically music production, more seriously. Blurryface is a definite improvement from Vessel. While it's popular to hate this album because of its success, I certainly did for the longest time myself, the album's success isn't unwarranted. It matures the production of the previous album and adds more musicality that bridges the gap between their music on both sides of the record deal. Lane Boy isn't joking when it talks about time changes, genre changes, lyrical dilemmas, etc. One of the best things 21 Pilots did, and continue to do, is adapt their sound to fit the times. Something many bands, especially with their sophomore album, fail to do, and become stagnant with what has become their sound, to the point that they become irrelevant. A band like Bowling for Soup was fantastic in 2005, but apart from the Phineas and Ferb theme song, which is an absolute banger, by the way, they would never be taken seriously as a modern band in the current decade. In Blurryface, the synthetic elements and production of Vessel are still there, but what was formerly focused on indie pop has now been infused with rock-rap elements, and more pressingly, reggae. This is a trend with every successive album the boys have released, each one adding one or two new recognizable genre changes to an already established sound. Horns are present in Blurryface, with most of them being played by Josh Dun himself, who I can only assume became bored of solely playing drums and doing backflips during their live shows. On the other end, the issues I mentioned with different heads of production interrupt the flow of what is otherwise a very solid album. The production choices on each song almost always benefit the track in a way any of the other three producers would have done that much less justice. The other issue I have with this album is its overall pockets of dullness. While some of the songs sound very good, and there aren't any extreme lows compared to other 21 Pilots albums, this is the only album where I find myself bored by more songs than any other album in their collection. Though I admit the fact that I've listened to this album in whole nearly 100 times more than any other might play a part in that. Still, this is their most successful album, their most ambitious album both in background and execution, their most rewarding album for what it's done for the band and its fans. If I have to choose a favorite, I suppose it's going to be Blurryface. Anyways, onto the songs. There are 14 in whole, which is pretty normal for 21 Pilots, though that still feels a lot longer to say out loud than it feels to listen. It's well under an hour, and each track is sonically distinct, which always keeps things interesting, even if some songs bore me by the end of their last chorus. In last place, number 14.
Help me polarize, help me down.
Believe it or not, this was the first album-only song I ever listened to from Blurryface, and it used to be my favorite song. Age and maturity has not been kind to my opinion of Polarize. Let's start with the obvious. This song is too loud. There's simply too much going on here, whether it's a rapid descent out of the atmospheric opening, the anxiety-inducing kick and lead combo that almost seems to accelerate as the song progresses, or the nonsensical screaming that ushers in the bridge. I don't know, but almost everything about this song doesn't work. I want to be careful to acknowledge that in previous videos I praised changing time signatures for their non-conformity in the ever-staling pop industry, but in Polarize, the time signature simply doesn't make any sense, and it feels like Tyler just added an extra measure to fit the whole chorus line into the song, rather than creatively blend the two the way he usually does. In my self-titled analysis, I praised A Car, a Torch, a Death for its use of a bird chirp overlaid on the offbeat snare. But whereas that was used as a creative element and mixed somewhat sparingly in relation to the rest of the soundscape, Polarize's use of a dog bark in the second verse is just obnoxious, and it serves no other purpose than amping up the anxiety in the listener. I understand that that's the purpose of the song, but there are ways to better portray that than simply annoying the listener. And in terms of lyrical quality, there isn't a lot to go off here.
My friends and I, we got a lot of problems.
Thanks, Tyler, I got that. And then there's the bridge. See, after the hiatus, many fans turned to the opening line, which is Spanish for Sunday on Fire, and saw it, along with the lyric,
"You'll have to come and find me,"
as a hint toward when the band would return, most people deciding on a Sunday in August, when the band would finally post to their socials again. And given that the band would eventually speak on July 9th, 2018, which was a Monday, that just didn't make any sense. If you take it as a religious reference to the songs Migraine and The Judge, in which Tyler discusses his dislike of the Sunday scaries and the fact that hell is hot in order to melt his soul, it still doesn't make a lot of sense, and really just sits as a meaningless catchphrase lyric in a different language, which the band have a bad habit of doing. All in all, this song adds nothing of note for a lot of people, and my love for it as a bass player has long since evaporated. Number 13. I will preface this entry by saying two things. One, I'm not from Ohio, and two, this song is a staple of their live shows and is absolutely fantastic every time they perform it. If you're not familiar, 21 Pilots traditionally open their concerts with one or two songs where Tyler is masked in a balaclava. Then during what is usually their third song, they start fairly local in complete blackness, and when the lights come on, the song is performed on stage by a masked body double. Meanwhile, Tyler is escorted to an entrance to the upper deck of the arena, where, after performing the majority of the song, the body double jumps into an access hole in the stage, and a spotlight flashes on the real Tyler, who performs the rest of the song from the arena balcony before unmasking himself on the song's final snare hit. This gives the impression of Tyler teleporting from on stage to up in the balcony in just a matter of seconds. I've seen it done 3 times, and it's one of the coolest parts of their show, especially if you're in the section he decides to sing from, which happened to me when I saw the pair in Denver. Cool performance aside, the song itself is nothing special. It's meaningful, I suppose, to fans from Ohio, who are referenced as good people in the song, though I have friends in Grand Rapids who have reliably informed me that this might be a lie. The soundscape of the track is really cool. The eerie chorus vocals and grimy bass bass hits add a layer of anticipation that is really effective at something like a live show, but on the album, when it's fitted between Ride and Tear in My Heart, this song feels really out of place. And while it might be too simple for some people, both lyrically and melodically, I think the song's simplicity actually plays in its favor. It's atmospheric enough that complicating things could have made it sound significantly worse. All in all, not a bad song, mostly a safe song, and it doesn't do anything for me personally except make me want to perform more exciting shows, so that's why it sits all the way down here. Number 12.
Don't forget about me.
The 21 Pilots Trap Song. Actually, they've done a fake trap song on every album since Blurryface, so I suppose we can thank Doubt for starting that trend. And at least this one can say it doesn't chicken out of the genre at the chorus the way Pet Cheetah and No Chances do. Still, I've always thought this was a weird one. Earlier I praised the group for constantly shifting their sound to better fit the attitude of the times, but going full hip-hop with mid-2000s R&B sounds like whistles and chants is not something anyone ever expected from 21 Pilots to do. This might be the least 21 Pilots song the group has ever created, and while it's honestly hype AF musically, the lyrics are still angsty white boy filler. I couldn't play this song at a party without the whole crowd turning to me like I just pulled out a guitar and offered to play Wonderwall. One thing interesting to note is the lyrical inclusion of bishops. Tyler has this really cool habit of adding nonsensical references to things he hasn't yet created, so that in the future he can call back to them if his ideas are fleshed out enough. Take for example the line,
Gnawing on the bishops, claw away up this system.
When Blurryface came out, Tyler hadn't completely worked out his ideas for Trench, but they were still in the back of his mind hoping to someday use them. So he throws a reference to follow up on in later material within this song, even though it has very little to do with the subject matter in this track itself. Honestly, the lyrics of the rest of this song are fantastic, and do significantly more for portraying anxiety and self-image than Polarized does. I'll knock points for the bizarre auto-tune on the chorus, and the fact that the lyrics don't match the music very well, and the fact that this doesn't sound like a 21 Pilots song. But all in all, Doubt is a very interesting listen, if not a fun listen. Number 11.
I'm taking my time on my ride.
The reggae one. The white people with dreadlocks one. Honestly, this song provides me with a very good mental image of the city of Portland. Many people really like this one. I'm not one of them. Every version of this song that has come out since the original was released is mountains better. And if you disagree with me in the comments without acknowledging the words I'm about to say, I will simply reply to you with my personal account and call you a casual. I think Ride is boring. I think lyrically it's uncreative. I think many of the sounds they picked for the synths and lead lines were the wrong choice. Like Polarized, I think this song is too loud. I think the mixing of the music is too loud over the lyrics. I think Tyler's delivery of the rapped second verse is poor. I actually really like the bridge, which is weird because he's rhyming the same line with itself for 8 phrases. I also like the ending, at least in his delivery, until the synths once again overtake the mix and blow my eardrums out. I think despite this being the most reggae-heavy song on the album, the reggae elements were done far better in other installments on the album, mostly because of their delicateness. See the following entry. I might hate Ride for a very specific reason. See, most bands usually break out with one major song, and then occasionally have a few more radio hits throughout later albums once they're established as a mainstream act. When I discovered 21 Pilots, they were still a growing mid-card group. They'd yet to headline their own major tour. Even though I wasn't from Ohio myself, there was still this small-town localized feel to the band that I liked having as my own niche group that I liked to listen to. Then one day I was walking between classes when I overheard a popular girl in my grade singing Ride, which I hadn't even realized was just released in its single form. As soon as this happened, I realized the small band feel I had with 21 Pilots was over. It wasn't even that they had broken into the mainstream. It was now they were megastars, and I lost that intimate connection I felt I had with the group. I understand this is extremely selfish and pretentious, but that's an honest feeling I felt I'd share with you about an otherwise unremarkable song. Number 10. I suppose they had to let Josh have his fun eventually. See, Ride, this is how you use reggae sparingly. Doubt, this is how you make a new genre still feel like the band's music. Honestly, the subtlety with which Laneboy infuses the offbeat snare of classic reggae while still operating tempo and beat changes should win an award. Musically, this might be one of the best sounding songs on the album. Where I criticize Ride for having all the wrong synth sounds, Laneboy chooses every single one right, including the bass synth, which is the most compelling element of the song, in my opinion, as an unbiased bass player. That being said, this used to be my least favorite song on the album, and it remains low for a few very good reasons. This song feels way too long. The runtime of this track is under 4:15, but if you told me that this song was 6 minutes long, I could absolutely believe you. And that mostly comes down to the fact that they end the song twice before faking you out with 2 separate drum showcases. Now, I'm not complaining about the drums in this song. Josh Dunn's performance is among his best in the entire T.O.P. catalog, with his signature offbeat snare patterns doubled under one of the hardest to play hi-hat licks in the second verse I think I've ever seen in pop music. Like I said, they let Josh have his fun on this one. My problem mainly sits in the progression and the pacing of the song. The lyrics are primarily done halfway through the track, with one copy and paste chorus thrown back in about the 3/4 mark. If you've seen my Black Mirror ranking video, you know that I have a problem with material reliant solely on fake-out endings without any substantive material to back it up. A single false finish to the song could have been beneficial, and actually added some space in the drum solo to make it more technically captivating, but the fact that they have two really makes the ending feel insignificant, especially when the track is followed up by The Judge, which opens with a long, spacey opening. The second fake ending, therefore, makes you unsure if the song is actually over, and every time I re-listen to the track, I always dread sitting through the last half. Lyrically, it's hit or miss depending on who you are. The meta-narrative of the music industry not liking the band, and specifically this song itself for having unconventional time changing, is fun, but I've grown indifferent to it over the years. Firm 10th place for me. Number 9. We've reached the part of the list where everything here and above I would classify as a good song, whereas everything below it sits either indifferent or worse with me. The top 9 songs on the album are bangers if you listen to them in a fine mood. Not Today's detractor mainly comes from where it sits in the album. It's immediately preceded by Message Man and Hometown, which are sonically similar enough to where after 6 minutes of hearing them in order, you might be turned off of yet another song before the finale. To Not Today's benefit, the soundscape is among the most different on the album, mainly down to its use of horns in the final act, which make it feel almost parade-like, at least in my jazz-centric opinion. Like Tyler touches on in the lyrics, the song's upbeat tempo and chord progression drastically contrast the subject material in the lyrics, which focus on depressive inactivity and the lethargic inability to do things in certain mental states. The best thing Not Today has going for it is the chord progression. The verses are fun in themselves, with a 1-6-3-4-5 movement not usually seen in pop music, before returning to a more traditional 4-1-6-5 for the pre-chorus. The real fun happens in the chorus, where the tonal root of the song shifts from the major 1 to the major 4, where the new progression of 4-1-3-6-5 is actually a major chord rooted on the minor 7, followed by a 4-6-2-1. Music theory experts, please discuss below. All these factors in consideration, like I said before, Not Today suffers from being the 13th song on a 14-song album. And in no fault of its own, you listen to it waiting for it to be over. Number 8.
We don't believe what's on TV because it's what we want to see.
21 Pilots is probably best described, genre-wise, as ukulele screamo, a phrase coined by fans primarily based on the ending to House of Gold. While we don't believe what's on TV, geez, that's an obnoxious title, I'm gonna call it Greg. Greg. Yeah, I like Greg. Well, Greg doesn't have the traditional screamo the band usually employs. It's still filled with jabbing and screaming, along with ukulele that I think endears it to the ukulele screamo title. While Greg is mostly inconsequential and mainly acts as a palate cleanser between the ear hell that is Polarize and the later shopping mall pop of Message Man, it's a fun listen, with cute references about the relationship between Tyler and his wife, adding to the dynamic introduced in the chorus of Tear in My Heart. It also allows Josh to show off his snare rudiments in one of the most unique drum parts in the band's repertoire. I could criticize Greg for being what I would label a festival song, one where the song's only purpose is to be used at live shows as an interactive with the crowd. But whereas Freddie Mercury's famous Montreal opening would never have a place on a studio album, Greg really doesn't add much to the overall tone of Blurryface. I might be generous in having Greg up this high, but I always have fun with it, so I'm keeping it an 8th. Number 7.
Release me from the present, I'm obsessing on these questions.
Remember when I criticized Polarize for adding extra time signatures for no reason other than fitting additional lyrics? This is an example of a song where a weird time signature is done stylistically very well. It also does the reggae offbeat stylistically better than Ride. The vocal delivery in this song is among the best in the album, with the chorus phrasing done so fluidly, I would absolutely certify this track as a vibe. The bridge line where Tyler raps about writing triplets is kinda cringe, but the fact that he follows this up during the poetry divide section by pro-dividing the unsubdividing the... What's the opposite of subdividing in music theory? Anyways, he basically accents the 1-3-5 of his triplet instead of the usual 1-4, which creates a hemiola effect that really shows off the strength of his flow, something that has improved significantly since Regional at Best, and on this song is actually very impressive. Message Man also features the first outright guitar line since Aircatcher on their first album, which would start the shift of the band's sound from the original electronic live sound to the more performance-heavy material. As of their most recent tour, they now play with an entire live band, usually featuring at least one guitar. I also crashed my car to this song when I was 17, so that's fun. Number 6.
A shadow to despair at me. Spirits in the dark awaiting.
The song from the BMW commercial. Now look, I'm not criticizing the boys for selling out to the highest bidder, especially on a song which does fit perfectly into the background of a car showcase. If anything, the decision to do it was probably the choice of the studio. And even if the boys did play a hand in allowing the song rights to be given to BMW, at least it was on a lesser known track and not something major like one of the singles. The boys made a lot of money on an instrumental version of an unpopular track, and most people probably had no idea it was a 21 Pilots song. So did they sell out? Maybe, but who am I to criticize? And speaking of selling out, today's video is sponsored by Raid Shadow. Earlier, I used the term shopping mall pop in reference to Hometown and Message Man, and that's exactly how I feel when listening to this song. It feels inherently like background music. Like I could walk into any given Hollister in 2015 and hear this playing through the overheads. That being said, the background music is really good. The chosen chord progression of 5-2-4-6 is refreshing, and it's one of the few songs in the band's entire catalog not to feature the tonal major root anywhere in the song. The lyrics too propel this song above the middle ground that most of these latter half tracks fall into, with the band basically writing a sequel to Fairly Local, in the form of a contemplation about personal image over brand image, even in the town where they both grew up. This is something I have personally experienced in my hometown, a city 10 times smaller than theirs, but still having people know my associated brand, rather than me personally. The socialists in my comments can debate whether this is a reflection on late-stage capitalism. The rest of us will ignore you like we usually do. All in all, despite perfectly fitting into the feel of an electric BMW driving through the Bavarian Alps, this track has a relaxing merit in its own right. 6th place. Number 5.
I'm a goner. Somebody catch my breath.
Goner is the only track on the album that was written well in advance of Blurryface going into production. A demo of this song first appeared on the band's YouTube channel around the time of Regional at Best, though rumors through the fandom state that the song originally featured on copies of Tyler's solo album, before being pulled because it was too dark. The song could not be replaced by a better finale to Blurryface. Dealing with the need to reach out to others for help but unable to do it, the heavy lyrics with undertones of outright suicide are perfectly matched by the music and performance. Tyler's vocals begin intentionally weak and underdeveloped, which slowly mature until fading back again at the bridge. The song then breaks out into a manic episode, where the traditional screamo vocals play out the song until the final word, which is delivered with an exhausted but somehow uplifting flair. Goner's drum beat, beginning about halfway through the song, is perpetually building, until it dissolves at the bridge, trudging along as a musical metaphor for the daily life during periods of depression. Most impressive is the use of time changes in the song. The first half is almost exclusively a patient 3-4, but at the first chorus and then for the entire last half of the song, the 3-4 bars are underlined by triplet drum hits, essentially turning the time signature into 9-8. While not my favorite track on the album, Goner is among the most emotional, and highlights the best possible ending to perhaps the best possible 21 Pilots album. Number 4.
Wish we could turn back time to the good old days.
I know. I'm not supposed to put the popular one this high, but I've already outlined my reasons for why I believe this song was so successful. From a musical and production perspective, I believe this song deserves to be in the album's top 4. Apart from the haunting alien lead, the decision to flam the grimy bass over the mid-heavy drums puts the sound of Stressed Out firmly into vibes territory. Lyrically, it takes everything previously covered in Kitchen Sink and makes it more accessible to a more mainstream audience, though hardcore fans could argue that this is a bad thing. I personally don't believe popularity in itself is a bad thing, even when it comes to art. The difference between Stressed Out being a mainstream success and something like the most recent releases of Panic at the Disco are that Panic's songs have lost the inherent creative qualities that made them stand out from regular emo pop in the first place. Stressed Out, on the other hand, creatively captures the zeitgeist of an aging millennial population, coming to terms with an inability to reach childhood dreams based on the way of the world, whereas elder members of Gen Z, like me, can correlate this song with the impending dread of finishing school and failing to reach these dreams and expectations ourselves. This song is so tied with the socioeconomic reality of the mid-2010s, it's scary. Still, most people are of the opinion that popular equals bad. So, despite my firm belief that this song is good enough to warrant the number 4 spot, I'm expecting the backlash coming to me in the comments. Number 3.
She's the tear in my heart. I'm alive. She's the tear in my heart. I'm on fire.
I think most of the reason why this song has grown on me so much comes down to how bad Smithereens is on Trench. Since he married his wife, Tyler has added one song specifically about her on each album, and for 6 years this was easily the best of those. That was until Formidable was released on Scaled and Icy and completely blew Tear in My Heart out of the water. Still, Tear in My Heart really isn't the bad indie pop slog I thought it was on first listen. As someone still in my infancy of marriage, I understand the feeling of pressure on relationships to fulfill the expectations you place on them, especially at something as significant as a wedding. Even if you aren't married, there's a universality to Tyler describing his partner as the one person who can make or break him at any moment. And having since reframed the bridge of the song, Tyler really isn't saying anything political in the chorus. 21 Pilots is famously apolitical, despite their fanbase being overwhelmingly left-leaning and a large minority being part of the LGBT community. The use of the word government has very little to do with Tyler's opinions on John Kasich. It's almost entirely irrelevant. Instead, he's upset with any factors that interrupt the comfort of his partner and the security he wants to feel in his relationship by wanting to protect her. It just so happens that the discomfort in this situation is traffic caused by road construction in Columbus. This song has grown on me significantly, and I think it deserves to be as high as 3rd place on Blurryface. Number 2.
Can you save? Can you save my? Can you save my heavy dirty soul?
It was so easy for me to skip this song when I started to listen to Blurryface. It's easy to start with the second song when song number 2 is the most popular. For that reason, Heavy Dirty Soul is the last song I ever listened to off the album, and oh boy was I missing out. You could argue that the lyrics are a bit cringe. He references the YOLO trend of just a few years prior, and the pre-chorus isn't great from a lyrical and performance perspective. I'll defend the bridge though. I think that simile comparing anxiety to prey is fascinating, albeit a bit weird. Apart from those few items, this song is the perfect opener to Blurryface. Like Jumpsuit would do on the following album, it gets the heavy stuff out of the way early, with only Goner arguably having harder moments woven through its entirety. It sets the tone perfectly for the album's concept, dealing with genre blending, overactive thought processes, the desire to break away from the traditional, the desire for redemption, and despite the rest of the album being primarily secular, the song is inherently religious. The chorus is a prayer. If you look at it from an irreligious perspective, you could argue this is a plea for help to a support system, or to therapy, which is something echoed in Not Today and Goner. But if you take it from the background of 21 Pilots, these 3 songs, along with the one track I have yet to discuss, are blatantly religious. From a musical perspective, this song has perhaps the best soundscape on the album. The industrial feel to both the synth sounds and the background noise invoke a feeling of systematic conformity later built upon in Lane Boy. The tonal shift between the verses, through the pre-chorus and into the chorus perfectly portrayed this difference in mindset and delivery. The choice to then change every other measure in the song's ending from 4/4 to 5/4 invoke a sense of grasping for something that's not there or not responding. You could argue both a music executive not biting on 21 Pilots' different style of music, or sticking to the religious tone, feeling like your desperation prayers are going unanswered. The live version of this song is even better than the album, with Tyler screaming the final lines in an exasperated cry of said desperation. This song is near perfect in terms of what a 21 Pilots song means on Blurryface, and it would take a serious powerhouse of a track to be better than Heavy Dirty Soul. Number 1.
You're the judge, oh no, set me free.
It simply had to be The Judge. I mentioned at the start of this video, The Judge stands out like a sore thumb, both in its production and its performance. For this song specifically, that's an excellent thing. This song is easily the most blatantly religious on the album. Advancing the prayed chorus of Heavy Dirty Soul, Tyler is addressing God directly, the only one who can set him free from both the traumas of his past and the anxieties he's currently facing. The verses are a bit more ambiguous. I've always interpreted the first verse as a two-way story. First, the use of attractive arts by the devil to draw people into his domain, whether it be into further depression or moving them away from depression into a destructive lifestyle. Second, a reference to the social attitude toward people who remove themselves from activities due to lethargic episodes, and other people's habit of ostracizing them as outsiders. Like every good 21 Pilots song, the lyrics to The Judge can be interpreted in much more than just one way. The second verse is that much wider. The opening line could be a reference to the album itself, being a stylistic and visual change from the sound and scope of the previous 3. The line about the route heading south, which is a really hard thing to say, might be one of those hidden references which would eventually be picked up with Nico and the Niners using east as the primary direction, in and out of Dima. It also references a number of other songs on Blurryface, including Doubt and Not Today. Musically, this song is separated into 5 main sections, the middle 3 of which are lyrical. The opening, like I mentioned earlier, is super atmospheric, leading into a soft ukulele pop verse that invokes a visual representation of the Northern California coast. The song picks up at the first chorus, where a straight drum beat is matched by quarter note hits on both bass and piano. Then there's the bridge, which brings heavy drums in to accent the lyrical dilemma before cutting out completely, before returning from silence with an upbeat piano riff. The addition of a Hammond organ in the final chorus brings a sense of grandeur and finality to what sits as the album's midway finale, and Tyler sneakily shouts Josh Dunn's name in the background vocals of said chorus. The final notes of the song are then played out by a softly mixed outro, where a dimmed piano quietly plays the melody over the top of a layered vocal hum. This is as close to a 21 Pilots masterpiece as we will ever get. It manages to rummage through every sound and style of play the band has ever done up to that point, and manages to progress in a way that is somehow neither jumbled nor overwhelming. If I had a single criticism, I might mention that the EQ on the hi-hats is a hair loud on the upper end, but apart from that, I can't find anything I dislike on this entire track, and I promise I'm not letting nostalgia lead when I say this is probably my favorite 21 Pilots song of all time. With that, we've come to the conclusion of part 4. If you're wondering where the first 3 parts are since you can't yet find them, it's because they are not yet finished, and I decided to go all Star Wars on you and release the videos out of order based on which stories I wanted to tell first. My wife can attest that I neglected her and our newborn son in the making of this video, so if you liked it and want to support us financially, feel free to head on over to the Patreon page and pledge whatever you might be able to in order to help us ease the financial burden that is running a YouTube channel. Otherwise, stay tuned for the remaining parts of this series, as well as potential future projects where I talk about the histories and analyses of my favorite films, books, and albums. In the meantime, there are plenty of other videos on the channel that I'd love to have you check out, ranging anywhere from sports quizzes to film rankings. Like this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel if you feel so inclined. But until the next time, I hope to see you very, very soon.